Okay, so today's live stream. In my last video, I said 3 o'clock, so if anyone happened to have heard that, it's unlikely because I've just uploaded it and said that time, but it's half three, so apologies if there has been miscommunication there. It's my fault because it was taking longer to upload. Yeah, so see how this goes as usual. It only works, of course, if subscribers interact. That's the key thing. So, if you guys and girls are online, please leave a question, leave a comment. That's the whole point of this, to interact with my subscribers. You can ask my questions about something, you can raise a subject, anything, absolutely anything. And we'll see how this goes. I mean, I could do a running commentary, but I don't even know if these live streams play back as such. Perhaps they do. And if that's the case, so if you miss this one, don't worry about it. I'll be doing them periodically. But while I'm waiting for interaction, I'm just going to multitask. I'm going to read newspaper because there's no point in me just waiting. I've got incense burning here, so that's always relaxing. Yeah, I'm just going to wait for someone to come along, see how this goes. The last few live streams I feel have went very well, so hopefully this will be good as well. Like I say, I'm just going to read newspapers well, and I'll keep an eye out for messages. Come along, people. This is what it's all for. It shows one person, but I don't know if that's myself or someone else. So remember, people, the whole way this works is for interaction. I know a lot of you, a lot of my active subscribers will participate, so please do. Any questions you want to ask to me, or maybe follow up. Hey, Carl. Good. So you've saved me having to just read the newspapers and passively look on. How are you? Hope you're well. If you have any questions, anything, I mean, ideally we'd need more than just myself and one person, but perhaps sometimes it could be like um, what's the term? A domino effect. That's good. I'm doing okay myself. PayPal froze some money that I got in, so yeah, that's always a bit of a nuisance, but it came through today at least. So Carl, if you don't mind, I I only want the live stream to really go ahead if we get more viewers, so I might wait a little bit. But of course, if you have any questions, that can maybe get it started off. But ideally, we need a minimum, I would say, of 3 people, minimum. But if you want to raise anything, maybe we could just discuss it until someone else comes along. That's no problem. Yeah, the car bomb. I forget her name. Diana Silva. So I forget her name, but that's an interesting one. Because it reminds me of the 1999 apartment bombings in Moscow and other cities, which it's now widely speculated may have been. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but may have been the Putin regime's excuse to start the first Chechen war, or the second Chechen war, rather. Because Putin was portraying himself as a hardliner at that time, as he always has, and it was a good, convenient way to get into the second Chechen war. So this attack, I think it's possible it was Ukrainian intelligence, but honestly, I'm not going to cry too much because this woman was maybe her father was the target, but she was an ultra nationalist as well. She said some very dehumanizing things about the Ukrainian people. Um, and she was part of Putin's propaganda industry. So I'm honestly not going to cry over her death. I'm not going to gloat about it either, but because that's the problem. Russia could now use it as an excuse for revenge. It could very well have been the Putin regime has done this as an excuse, although I don't know how high profile she is, but yeah, I mean, these Russian nationalists are completely fascistic in the way they dehumanize the Ukrainians. It's so. I was thinking, her father is one of the architects of the war, and maybe now that he's burying his own daughter, he'll know what thousands of Ukrainians have had to go through burying their children and their parents and their brothers and sisters. But I imagine there'll be a lot of things on the Rusnet, the Russian web, that's vilifying the West and saying, oh, it was the CIA, it was MI5, it was the Ukrainians. It might even have been the Ukrainians, but it would be a big risk for them to go into the heart of Moscow. Although I suppose it would be, from a tactical point of view, it would be a major morale blow to the Russians, which is no bad thing. But I think it would be a bit of a risk, especially to kill someone who she's a nationalist mouthpiece. But I don't know. It would make more sense to kill a general or something. I would have thought. Thanks for the thumbs up. I assume that was you, Carl. So thank you. The thing about these live streams is difficult to know the right time. Someone else come along. Welcome. It's difficult the precise time to do these because um, different time zones. Even though most of my subscribers, hey Declan, how's it going? Welcome. I was just saying, even though most of my subscribers are in the UK and Ireland, there's other parts of the world that people come into, Canada, um, Turkey, different countries. So it's difficult to find a time that everyone might be free. But anyway, I'm pleased you guys are here. Declan, have you had any follow up, if you don't mind me asking, on your incident? I know. I think you told me that the court hearing was prolonged. Um, I don't know if will you have to make a court appearance as a witness because you were the victim of assault, or will you have to do that? Or if they plead guilty, hopefully you'll be spared having to do that. I think last time you told me they were blaming each other. Is that right? If you don't want to talk about it, of course, it's no problem. But I just hope you have my profound sympathy because no one should have to go through that. No further update. Have the police been in touch with you? Have they? Because here's the thing, if I obviously feel very strongly about the victim, the subject of law and order and crime. So getting perspectives like yours could be useful if I ever decided to start some sort of think tank or something. Um, so Declan, have you found the bureaucracy frustrating? I mean, let me just put it bluntly, have you found the police helpful, or have they been a bit evasive and given the impression they don't really care? How have you found that? I guess in your area it's Norfolk Constabulary, is that right? I don't know if they share a force. Some rural police forces tend to share, for example, Devon and Somerset, I believe, share a force, or Somerset and Cornwall, I believe. Devon and Cornwall. So some rural counties tend to share forces. Yeah, I wonder where everyone else. Yeah, this is the thing with live streams. It's really potluck because the last few live streams have been very interactive. But guys, it's only 10 minutes in. I will give it a bit longer because sometimes people show up and I want to give them the opportunity. Um, they're in custody too, which I'm happy about. Police was good and quick in my experience, just waiting for hearing. What's good they're in custody, I mean, that's better than nothing. Sometimes this sort of thing happens and they just escape. So the very fact that they have been arrested and they're in custody is a good thing. Are they actually, when you say in custody, are they actually in a cell? I mean, are they awaiting, or are they on remand or something? I mean, what's the situation? I saw a fourth person came along there. We're back down to two. Don't leave, people. because these live streams can be quite interactive if people participate. So I saw it went up to 4, it's back down to 2 now. So don't be shy, people. Declan and Carl are commenting. That's how it's done. Ideally, a good live stream should have perhaps, I'd say, a minimum of 5 people commenting. I mean, I appreciate all the interaction, but really to get it going, I think we need a bit more. But if you guys have any questions for me, yeah, Carl, you were asking about the situation in Moscow. I heard today's Ukraine's Independence Day. I don't know if things could escalate. I was seeing some live stream news footage last night. I was kind of browsing the internet, and there was speculation that Russia could be preparing a major assault on Kyiv again, not just in the east, but again on Kyiv, which would really escalate things. Bastards. I mean, they've already put the Ukrainians through hell. But I genuinely think that Russia's been shocked by the resilience of the Ukrainians. I mean, I don't think they expected them to last this long. Yes, on remand, I'm more frustrated with all delays. Yeah, I would be as well. You could look at it this way as well, though, Declan. I mean, it's putting them in a position. I mean, the people who assaulted you, they're going to be waiting and figure, what's my fate? So, I don't want to say karma, that's the wrong term, but at least it's putting them in a position where they know they're going to face consequences and they don't know what they are. So that maybe gives them time to think about what they've done to you. Hopefully. Hey, Toxic Holy Grenade. How's things? I'm okay, thanks. Thanks for coming along. Um, I was just talking to the other guys about Ukraine and various things. I'm okay. I got a student of mine. I do online tutorial work. She paid in advance for lessons, which is kind of mixed blessings. I need the money, but it means that I have to let that money stretch, and it's not a massive amount. PayPal kept it on hold. Ever since Cluna Junior High School, I had faced depression and lost so much confidence because of the abusive nature of. Um, it's important to note that it is not absolutely everyone because there are decent people, but there are too much individuals, teachers and principals in particular, who are just downright callous and toxic. Especially the fact that I'm a person with autism. Um, Before I continue, Toxic Holy Grenade, I don't think you're alone, mate. I know from speaking to other subscribers, some of my other subscribers also have autism. I don't myself, at least I've never been diagnosed with it, but I do know a few people who have it, so um, I've got some insight into this. Um, See, with this Prime Minister contest, I think it would be better to call a general election since we could choose the next leader instead of a party. Yeah, Carl, that's a very good point. I'll come back to that, but if you don't mind, I'll just address Toxic's point first. By the way, Toxic Holy Grenade, what's the THD? What does that stand for? I'm just curious about that. Is that like a computer game or something? What does that actually stand for? I'm just curious about your username. It's unfair, unjust, and it's just downright dishonest and toxic. School toxicity is the main reason why I dropped out back in 2013. It begs the question of what sort of discipline this is. It's discipline abuse, even though that term hasn't come to light yet. Discipline and punishment can be abused. Absolutely. So you said you dropped out of school back in 2013. Was this what sort of school was this? Was this secondary school? Was this sixth form? What are you referring to? Me and the other, I. Hi Nathan, long time no join. Hope you're well. How's your study in journalism going? Recall you commenced a degree. Are you currently working in it? I apologize if this is off topic. No, any topic's good. I mean, we could talk about anything. Quickly to address that point, because I've got a few questions going on here. I did get the degree almost a year ago. I really need to do something with that, and to be honest, I'm a little bit anxious because I've got I've got the degree. I mean, I've got the qualification. I've got a press pass, but I'm just to be completely honest, I'm a bit concerned about making that first commission to an editor and it getting rejected, and then what that will do to my confidence. If so, I think I'll need tough skin. I think I'll need to keep pushing to get that first commission. But I really need to do something soon. No one has said I have to do it soon. I mean, I'm not working against any timeline exactly, except that my press pass lasts for 2 years. And I'm a little bit concerned about forgetting some of the things I learned. Probably most people on that course would have started immediately. For me, it's been, well, it's August now. I graduated in October, so 10 months. So basically, I need to do something soon. I was interested in proofreading and editing, but it's very difficult to get into. Yeah, absolutely. We can talk more about this in a minute if you don't mind, but I'll just go back to, out of politeness, I'll go back to toxic. Basically, high school. Were so toxic. You mentioned you actually named the institution. Are you saying that that into Clunac? I'm not familiar with that. Is that? I apologize. I might have asked you this before. Is that in the UK or Canada? Um, I'm sorry. I think you have told me before, but I've forgotten. But I mean, you're touching on a few issues there. So discipline, abuse. Are you talking about from staff, or are you talking about senior students, or bullying, or what specifically are you referring to? Certainly, that atmosphere in general can be corrosive. Carl, see, with I'll address your point whilst I'm letting Toxic think about his reply. See, with this prime minister contest, I think it will be better to call a general election since we could choose the next leader instead of party. Yeah, this is something I thought a lot about. It's important to consider, though, in our system, we've never directly chosen a prime minister. We're not a republic. We don't directly choose the leader of the government. Um, but one does get. I mean, I'm fed up with the contest. It's going on way too long, and I don't understand why the Tories have done it this way. I mean, I understand you can't just choose a leader overnight, and there has to be a contest. But I think it would be better if they'd I mean, I don't know why they've chosen the 6th of September. So this thing drags out for, it seems like the world's longest leadership contest. It just seems to be really dragging. I mean, it's strange because it was whittled down to two candidates. Then the two candidates, Truss and Sunak, battle it out for over a month. It just seems unnecessarily long. Why not give them a few debates, let the Tory members decide, give them 2 or 3 weeks at most, not what's it been, 5 weeks? Just seems unnecessarily long. The other thing I'm wondering about, Liz Truss is still technically Foreign Secretary, so I wonder how she's balancing out her very high profile job as Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom with running a leadership contest. It just seems, I imagine there'll be junior Foreign Office ministers who can perhaps handle some of those briefs, but it just seems, I don't know. It would. I think maybe it should be stipulated that if someone's running for the office of prime minister, they should be mandated to resign from their current job. Perhaps, like in the American system, if a governor wants to run for president or a senator, they have to resign, as far as I know, from that role, or it has to go to its natural end before they run for president. As far as I know, I could be wrong about that. But yeah, in terms of going to having a general election, I'm quite sympathetic to that idea. But what the Tories would say is the people voted for the Conservative Party in 2019. The Tories won the general election. Thereby, they have the right to choose their own leader. But the new leader could they take a different approach from Johnson or not, then there's a significant portion of Tories who still feel it was betrayal and Johnson should be on the ballot. I don't agree with that. I think he wrought his own problems, so to speak, and I think he should have went because ethics in public life is, in my opinion, it's non-negotiable, and it was one thing after another. Um, but yeah, I mean, a general election, I wouldn't be against it. But personally, I'm still undecided who I would vote for. There's a lot of things I dislike about the Tories. I don't think either Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak will get hard on these greedy energy companies. I have a big problem with that. But a lot of things can happen in a parliamentary term. But the next general election scheduled for 2024, I will say this: I think Labour would be very, very foolish to get rid of Starmer before a general election. Give the man a chance. That's all I say. I mean, I think it's unfair to get rid of a leader before they've been tested in a general election, especially since he's actually doing quite well. Labour's winning by elections. I made a video recently about the situation the Labour Party's in. There's things I don't like about Starmer, but I still say he has. I wouldn't totally dismiss him. I think if he just gets rid of some of the woke identity politics, and I mean, he's performed stronger at Prime Minister's questions, I feel. And I don't think he would be incapable of being a Prime Minister. I just have some unease about the woke pandering that he's been coming out with. But anyway, let me address some of the other questions. I was interested, sorry, I've already read that. Teachers and principals, and by the way, Clunac is located within Portadown in Northern Ireland. Okay. I thought it sounded like it could be somewhere in Ireland, north or south, but I wasn't sure. I mean, I know from experience that bullying in schools in Northern Ireland is horrendous. That's one reason I left Ulster back in 2000. The bullying in my school was horrendous. Then again, I got bullied in England as well. So, big challenge for next PM will be the cost of living crisis. Absolutely. I mean, Truss is talking about lowering tax now. What one thing this is typical Toryism. Neither of them will stand up to these big energy companies. I mean, the Daily Express, which is a pretty conservative paper, they had this big headline a while back. In fact, I've got it. Let's see. Um, because I buy all newspapers, even ones I don't agree with. Truss promises new laws to smash strike misery. Well, that's typical Toryism. I mean, I'm with the strikes. I don't agree with wildcat strikes that hurt the public, but there's been a lot of talk about greed. I mean, the Tories talk about the union bosses being on big salaries, and maybe they are, but the money these big energy companies are making and their CEOs is reprehensible. And neither Sunak or Truss will stand up to that. Just like in 2011, when the big thing was banking greed, and banking CEOs getting huge bonuses. I don't think that railway CEOs, managers, should be getting bonuses when their companies are failing. I mean, the number of delayed services. I've been on a service. It was Sunderland to London. It just broke down. It broke down. We all had to get off at Peterborough. So long as commuters are suffering in this way, I don't think that there should be a bonus culture at these companies. And I think it infuriates people. The spokeswoman for Thames Water, or I think it was Southern Water actually, I forget the precise name, but it was the biggest water company. She was justifying the bonus culture, even though people in that region were long suffering with um, cuts and all sorts of things. So, yeah, I don't trust either Sunak or Truss to stand up to that sort of corporate greed. It's just not in Tory nature. Um, let's see, we'll go back a little bit because I don't want to miss any comments. Let's see. Opinionated Scotsman. Right, I'm just going back a bit, people, because I don't want to miss your comments. I spoiled my ballot in the last election. We'll probably do the same thing if there's another election. Yeah, I wouldn't generally advocate that because I think that in many parts of the world, people don't have any choice. So I wouldn't necessarily advocate that. Having said that, if people are so disillusioned with the choices they have, then I guess it is a democratic point of expression to spoil a ballot. I guess it is just another statement of expression that I do not endorse any of the above. I think perhaps that should be a choice, but it's unfortunate that you felt that way. Um, I guess in most seats, I mean, in Scotland there's going to be the SNP as well, but in most English seats there's going to be Labour, Tory, Liberal Democrat. Usually a Green is on the ballot, and occasionally an Independent. In local elections, I tend to go for the Liberal Democrats here because they tend to be good campaigners. I mean, they're hardworking; they do a lot locally. But parliamentary elections recently, I went for Labour simply because my local MP is quite good. She's not a bad MP. I liked her role on the committee investigating reality television, but I'm not going to be complacent either. I'm not just going to give her my vote. It's Julie Elliott, if anyone's wondering. Julie Elliott, Labour MP. Um, I'm honestly, I don't want to say a swing voter or a floating voter because it makes it sound like I'm not conscientious. This is a thing. One thing about swing voters, actually, if anything, we're more conscientious and we're more political, precisely because we're putting thought into it. Anyway, apparently energy bills will reach 5,500 next year. It's insane, and they're talking now about pints. A pint of beer in a London pub could get up to £14 in 2025. That's sick. I mean, that's absolutely going to close a lot of pubs, and pubs are a big part of London culture. I mean, the London pub. That's just insane. No one is going to pay 14 quid for a pint unless you're maybe on a date and it's a special occasion. I don't know. It's just extortionate. Um, so I just hope this is a temporary situation and we'll see. I mean, I honestly need to patch up my knowledge on economics, but I don't know if this will be a temporary situation. And there's probably a lot of factors involved. Certainly, the war in Ukraine is part of it, uh, but it's not the only factor. Toxic holy grenade. So I'm hoping that democracy would evolve to the point of giving birth to the rule of law, where all of us, including the people in charge of business and schools, are equal under the rules. And I do wish there would be more independent watchdogs that would monitor misconduct of abusive and toxic teachers and staff so schools can be a friendlier places to be in. Um, well, I mean, what you're talking about, I definitely agree with accountability of power. And I have a big thing about, I've been very vocal about the sentencing council and the parole board because they are people who have power. The sentencing council are basically responsible for setting the length of time an offender can serve or what the punishment should be. Now, I believe I'm deeply frustrated with them, and I'm deeply frustrated with the Ministry of Justice. I sent a letter, an email rather, to Dominic Raab recently. Now, I actually think Raab is a better Justice Secretary. I think he's done, and I'm not evading your point, Toxic, on teachers. I will come back to that. But um, I emailed Rab this lengthy message about justice in this country, only to get a message saying, "Oh, this email's from my constituents only. Please direct your message to the Ministry of Justice." And I'm thinking, well, I could have seen that in the first place. So I was a bit irritated by that. It felt like a waste of time. So I go to the Ministry of Justice, and of course they have word limitation, and they've this big disclaimer: we will not tolerate abusive messages. But here's the thing, people want to feel empowered. People want to feel that they have a voice. I accept that I'm not going to get everything my own way, but I do feel an immense sense of frustration. I don't know if you guys feel the same. One of them, for me, a big, big one, is the Ministry of Justice. But it's not just that; it's also these greedy energy companies. I mean, what power does an ordinary person have against their greed? It's we can lobby, we can write petitions, we can protest, but ultimately there's limited power, even in a democracy. So what you're touching on, Toxic, is people need to be empowered. Now you're talking a bit more specifically about schools. Um, Honestly, I can't speak too much from experience. I do think teachers have a challenging job. I will say that I've been a teacher, but I mean, I guess my question would be: are you talking about actual physical abuse? Are you talking about sexual abuse? It's no question that my experience at Clonach, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is so utterly tragic and depressing. They had to go to visit professional psychiatrists and mental health experts because of it. I'm really sorry to hear that you went through that, mate. I mean, it must have been a very difficult experience. If you're comfortable talking about it, what are you referring to specifically? You're talking about abuse, but was this physical abuse by staff? Was it sexual abuse? And again, I want to be sensitive here. If you're not comfortable talking in the live stream, don't. But I'm just wondering what specifically you're referring to. I'm sure that it's worth covering in the future. Would it be, Nathan? Well, again, I'd need to know what you're specifically talking about. I'm not dismissing it. I'm just thinking, what's the nature of the abuse that you're talking about? In my area, it was Tories, Libs, Labour, and the SNP, and I couldn't be in my right mind to vote for any of those. Whereabouts in Scotland are you, opinionated Scotsman? My parents, by the way, live in Dumfries and Galloway. So, whereabouts are you? If borrowing and spending continues and the government keep printing money, this will continue. Yeah, like I say, I don't want to embarrass myself. I'm not an economist. This is something I need to really. I'm ignorant, right? I'm just going to be upfront about that. There's a lot in terms of economics, basic economics, I need to patch up on. Um, Certainly, it's not good for a government to be in debt. Of course, the thing about the Tories, both Sunak and Truss will herald Thatcher. That's kind of the go-to in Tory circles. Every Tory wants to be Margaret Thatcher, but it's not exactly the same situation as the 1980s. So I think politicians, leaders have to also adapt to changing circumstances. But I think you're onto something there because I know enough to know that excessive borrowing isn't good. Declan, I'm hoping something will get done as there is no way most families can afford that. Yeah, I mean my own situation, I'm not in such a difficult situation. But I have profound sympathy for people who have anxiety about bills. I mean, I say I'm not in a situation. I'm in enough of a situation. I'm always anxious when I'm grocery shopping, and you just see the rise in prices. I mean, little things going up, and what I find disgusting, and I use the word disgusting, is the CEOs of these big companies get ever richer. I mean, if the rest of us are struggling, they should have an immediate freeze on their pay. Take, for example, the head of Network Rail. Now, he argues, oh, but my salary is less than my predecessor. His predecessor got 700,000 plus. Oh, I'm only on 560,000. Well, that's wonderful. Good for you. And that might seem really modest compared to like what Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are getting. I will say this, Bezos, second richest man in the world after Musk, Amazon. Look at the way Amazon treats its workers. I have to say, I'm not a socialist, I'm not, but there is something fundamentally rotten about that. That the people working for Amazon are basically in Dickensian conditions. If they go on a toilet break that's too long, they could be docked wages. And yet you have Jeff Bezos basically having his little fun and games with space. His rival company to Elon Musk. I think Blue Horizons is his company. What a fun guy! But the people at the bottom of the chain who are working in Amazon, I mean, he should be visiting those factories. If I was that rich, I don't know. I just think there's something fundamentally rotten about that, and I don't know how those guys could sleep at night. These super rich billionaires, when at the bottom of the food chain, the people who are working for them are. It's like it's clearly exploitative. That infuriates me. Let's see. Hello everyone. Hello Nathan. Hi LP. I'm at work, but I'm listening to you with my headphones on. Can't type though. That's great. I hope I'm not distracting your job. So don't get into trouble on my behalf. Toxic. Technically, on the subject of abuse, the sort of abuse I'm explaining, what is known as discipline abuse. For instance, teachers blaming and scolding an entire class, even if most are not in the wrong. Yeah, I mean, this is it. Really depends on the teacher. I do know what you're referring to. I remember at school, I used to feel strongly about that. Like I'm thinking, what's with this collective punishment? I'll be honest. There was one occasion, my class in China, there was some students at the back were being a real pain in the backside. They just would not shut up, and I was trying to explain the lesson. I was trying to get it through, and I very, very rarely lost my temper, but they just would not shut up. And I actually looked at them like to draw a hint, and they were talking to each other in Chinese. Like I guess they were saying, "We don't understand what this foreigner is saying." But I was looking at them. Look at my mouth. Be quiet. And I was saying it in Chinese, Anjing, Anjing, which is listen, listen. And it was they just were not listening. And I did lose my temper because I had 6 classes that day. But I immediately apologized. Well, not immediately, but at the end of the class, I said, "Look, I'm sorry I lost my temper, and I know it's not everybody, but you need to respect my role here." So I think what you're drawing at there, Toxic, is that this sense of collective punishment, it is wrong. I totally agree. And as a teacher, I was always careful not to collectively punish because in that incident, there were other students who were trying to help me out. They were trying to get these kids to be quiet. And kids, I mean teenagers. But it is, I mean, it's as a teacher, I will be honest with you, I see a teacher's perspective, but at the same time, I know what you're drawing at. I don't think there's any excuse for collective punishment. Definitely. Also, some teachers take it on themselves to like hold a class after closing time. I think that's inconsiderate towards parents and others. I don't think teachers should have a right to do that. Um, Aberdeenshire. Yeah, I've never been that far north. I've been up to Dundee, but never further north than that. I don't have an issue with businesses making large profits unless it comes at the expense of other people and exploitation. Well, the thing I would make about that, I mean, that's the point of business. That's the point of capitalism. But my thing is, well, okay, have a bonus for what's the expression, an impetus for motivation, right, for creativity and for innovation. That's fine. I have no problem with that in principle. But my issue would be, well, what's the point of a bonus culture if they're not delivering? Now, it's in their own interest to deliver to clients, to customers. If you have a railway company and their trains are always late and always breaking down, clearly the bonus culture is undeserved. But if you have a company and they're great, their trains are running on time, they're very efficient, and there's a satisfaction customers feel they're getting something from it, then the bonus culture would be deserved. There's a motivation there for regional managers or whatever it is. Although I will say, I don't think a regional manager for diversity and inclusion on Network Rail should be getting more than the foreign secretary, which is actually the case. So I'm not against bonus culture, and I'm not a socialist. I'm not against wealth in of itself, but that is the caveat. And the thing is, in the case of Amazon, there's unquestionably exploitation because the working practices have long been controversial. There was a pregnant woman, I forget where this was, it was somewhere in the UK, and I think she actually had to deliver in the bathroom of the facility. I forget the precise details of the story, but I remember looking at this, and because they had such stringent rules about time off and paid holidays and all the rest of it, she was forced to deliver in the bathroom of the warehouse. It was something pretty horrendous. But workers have long campaigned about the way they've been treated or spoken out about this. So to my mind, Jeff Bezos, he has wealth that most of us can't even comprehend. He has wealth that will make average billionaires look modest. So I do think there is something fundamentally rotten about that disconnect between someone that powerful and that wealthy and what's happening at the bottom of the chain. I am not against wealth in of itself. I'm not a socialist, but there is something fundamentally rotten about that, in my opinion. So in terms of profit, in terms of it has to correspond with delivery. If a company's doing great, if they are showing something for that profit, great. And not just railway companies, it could be anything. If you have if you have Starbucks or another big coffee chain or whatever, it could be a fast food chain. If there's customer satisfaction, then managerial profits make sense as a motivation. But I think that has to be the caveat. Those two things. Those at the bottom of the food chain, the low level staff have to be treated fairly, and customers have to have satisfaction. Those are the two basic litmus tests, I would say, for justifying a bonus culture. I mean, the Tories talk about something for nothing, and they have a go at unemployed welfare claimants, but the real something for nothing really is these extremely powerful companies getting profits for nothing, bonus culture for nothing. I think there is something in that. Okay, sorry. Go scroll back a bit. To be honest, I probably would get very cross too if I was a teacher, students not listening, you to say. Yeah, I mean, it's a big balancing act. In regards to sexism, like misogyny and misandry, there is a point that I would like to make. If a misandrist has a son, while a misogynist has a daughter, it will absolutely be sickening how they would have treated them, i.e., child abuse. Yeah, that's a big thing. I sometimes question, these really militant feminists. If they have sons, I mean, you do wonder what are they indoctrinating those young men. I actually can cite a case with this. There was a serial killer in California. I mean, my goodness, there's been so many in the United States. Um, I forget his name now, but he was called the co-ed killer, and he targeted young women on college campuses. So it was widely thought his crimes were motivated by misogyny. It emerged that he had a mother who was an extreme misandrist. She treated her daughters fine, but she used to put him in the basement as punishment for being a man and or being male. It often when women commit violent crimes, excuses will be made like, oh, they had an abusive husband or an abusive father, or she was raped. That explains her hatred of men. But if that excuse can be made for violent women, why not a son who's had an abusive mother? So I think you're absolutely onto something there. An extreme misogynist or misandrist is going to have an effect on their children. If you have a man who has a really bad attitude towards women and he's saying to be a real man, you need to control your woman, that's going to have a bad influence on his son, obviously. But if you have a woman who is constantly shaming men and constantly saying we live in this evil, overbearing patriarchy, and my boys will never be like that, she's constantly undermining them as males, that's going to be toxic as well. So absolutely. And this situation of early childhood development, I mean, I'm no expert on it. I know the Duchess of Cambridge has looked into this. Some of her work has involved this. um it's actually a very, very, very critical thing, because how they're being influenced at a very young age will have an influence on how they grow up. That's why I'm concerned about, I don't want to go off topic here, but how the trans lobby is influencing very young people. I mean, this idea that a 2-year-old can be trans. No way, no way. I mean, that's perhaps for a whole other video, but I think we need to be very careful how young people are influenced. I've heard stories of Amazon workers sleeping in tents near the warehouse to get work on time. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. This draconian culture that they have, and some people will say, "Oh well, they could just quit. They don't have to work for Amazon," but that's a bullshit excuse, because then the onus on them is to get another job, and then they have to have a reference. So it's ridiculous to say, "Oh well, they could just change job," as some people would. The issue is the working culture and the working practices at one of the world's most powerful companies. Um, and I do think Amazon is a disgrace. They're probably not alone. Probably eBay is not much better, but Amazon does have a reputation. Sports Direct was another one. This is a side of capitalism I really don't like, where these super powerful companies can ostensibly do as they please. And I remember, I think his name was Mike Ashley, when he was questioned by a parliamentary committee, the arrogance and the entitlement he was coming out with regarding the working practices at Sports Direct. I mean, he made excuses, but there is something fundamentally rotten about people getting wealthy and powerful off the backs of others. It's disgusting. And I guess this is not a black and white issue. I mean, on some level, probably every company is doing it along that chain somewhere. But I do think some companies are worse than others. And I do think the government has a role to strengthen working practices. I do think there is a role for government in that. I mean, this should not be happening in the United Kingdom in 2022. It just shouldn't. Technically, Amazon is not a saint. Well, that's an understatement. Um, Wait, did you do ESL teaching? Actually, I done TEFL, TEFL, teaching English as a foreign language, but I'm familiar with ESL. I think I took American TESOL as well, but that was years ago. And I've worked in China twice since then. Um, yeah, Southeast Asia is the same. Children struggle to pay attention. Yeah. I would say though the culture in the Far East is somewhat different. I mean, I haven't worked in a British classroom. I haven't been a teacher in this country. I was an exam invigilator. I'm not going to say that there's a reputation that Asian kids are much better behaved and there's no discipline problems. It's not entirely true. There are issues with discipline in the Far East as well, but there is differences. I mean, what I experienced was, let's say, 15 or 16-year-old student in China, they're more of a childlike mindset. I think Western teenagers are definitely more worldly wise and rebellious. Also in China, the worst thing a teacher can ask is, "Do you understand?" They will never give you a straight answer. They'll say yes, and it means no, they don't. So that's the worst question you could ask. In the West, that would be more straightforward. They either do or they don't. So there are differences there. Because I actually found I have three kinds of classes. Either it was a difficult, disruptive class whereby they weren't really taking much on board. It was a middle class in which they were quite good and they would take things on board, but there was a level of disruption and attention span. Or there were what I called the Stepford Wives classes, which were supposedly the best classes, but I actually found them not so easy because they were almost too polite and too, there was no life to them. It would be like I would try to get a little game going to motivate the students, and they would do it, but they'd sort of be like smiling, and the other classes just had more energy to them. So I actually preferred the middle classes most of all because they weren't so difficult that they weren't learning, but they weren't kind of this model class that wouldn't have much energy because we better do what the teacher says, and exactly, it's hard to explain. It's like they were nervous to say the wrong thing. They were almost too good, if that makes sense. Have you, me and the other have you taught in Southeast Asia? I mean, I should say I was in China, not Southeast Asia. Um, I class China as East Asia, but did you teach in Southeast Asia? Toxicology grenade, no one is. Yeah. I mean, you're right, opinionated Scotsman. Not, I don't think any company will be perfect, but I do think some stand out more than others for the working practices. So none of them will claim. I mean, pretty much any clothing company. This jumper I'm wearing was probably made in Bangladesh, and as a consumer, yeah, I could look at the source and I could question the source. But the problem is they're all doing it. So at some point, I would have to. When you really really break it down, you would end up having to basically get rid of everything you own because at some point it's going to have been made in a factory, probably in the Far East or Southeast Asia, where the working practices just aren't the same as the West. So I don't know how much power consumers really have. I think, for example, if I'm a wealthy man, if I buy a diamond for my girlfriend, there's a strong chance that diamond could be made by child miners in the Congo. So definitely that is something where I do have a choice. I could ask for the source of that. Um, Things like that. Let's see. Um, Technically, all of us mortal humans aren't saints. Absolutely, we're all flawed. But I mean, I wouldn't make too much equivalency here because there's a big difference between us and the sort of power that Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk has. So it's true, we're all flawed, but the more powerful someone is, the more ethical responsibility I would say they have in terms of, I mean, we all have a responsibility to treat other people well. Don't steal, don't hurt people, don't. But the more power there is, the more of a platform the person has, and therefore more of a responsibility. Hold on. What are your thoughts on LGBT pride? That's a good question. I'll come back to that one if you don't mind. Bezos is an example of uber capitalism. Both socialism and capitalism are evil in their own way. Yeah, I mean, I'm a centrist. I think definitely both could be excessive. I mean, a great socialist model, of course, is Venezuela, which is a completely failed state. And, someone like Jeremy Corbyn would have wanted us to, he kept harking on about the Venezuela model until, of course, it went to the gutter. But, of course, then they can't accept, oh, well, that's a failure of socialism. It's just the evil CIA interfering. But then crony capitalism and the excesses of capitalism definitely need to be called out as well. It's one reason I was very interested in the third way. This was popular in the late 1990s. Bill Clinton and Tony Blair and other leaders popularized it. Of course, they're dismissed as globalists now, but actually, the third way had a very good premise, which was the Cold War is over. Let's utilize capitalism. Let's utilize the tools of a globalized world, but not do it to the extent of disregarding labor rights and areas where socialism would be more concerned. So actually, I do think there was some merit in the third way. Let's see. They put LGBT education across the curriculum in Scotland a few years ago, and it's nonsense. Yeah, definitely. The SNP has they've went uber woke. I mean, it's one thing. I mean, leaving aside the issue of Scottish independence, the SNP is a very woke, very leftist party in many ways. And so, I mean, recently they made a man in charge of period. What was it called? The period dignity officer, and it's a man. It's a bloke. I think certain things. There's a common sense deficit with wokeism. My apologies for being off topic. I highly recommend Letters from Baghdad documentary about Gertrude Bell and her activity in the Middle East. Keep that in mind. I've heard of that. I've heard of that. With all this talk about workers' rights, this could be more of a reason to vote Labour. Well, absolutely. I mean, this is Labour's natural territory, isn't it? And I think if Labour gets those sort of things right, it would be an area they could capitalise on. Capitalise on, no pun intended. Um, Without going to extremes. I mean, without Corbynism, and that's one thing I like about Starmer. He, despite what some people say, he's not a Tory closet. He's not a Tory in the closet. I mean, he has called for an immediate energy price freeze and other things. I think he is. He is actually adopting some traditional Labour practices. Um, Sorry, guys. I'm just going to let's see. There's a lot of comments coming through, so I want to address them all. Um, Kids hear her drink at a far younger age. Kids here drink at a far younger age. McCool Kid Films. Where are you, McCool Kid Films? And I would suggest Nathan to read Ali Kiduri, British historian born in Baghdad in the mid 20s. I'm guessing you mean 1920s. Yeah, I mean, I read a lot. So it's always a case of fitting things in. Let's say I want to go back though. Someone made an interesting point. Um, well, yeah, I want to address this question on LGBT pride from Alon. So here's the thing. Um, I have gay friends. And broadly speaking, I am in favor of LGBT rights, especially LGB. The T part gets more complex, but I'm absolutely in favor of LGB rights. I mean, the right to be treated with dignity. I'm more or less in favor of equal marriage, things like that. It's good that society has moved on from some of the attitudes of the past. I will say this, though. There are aspects of pride that I think go too far. One of my main issues with pride, and I'm not against pride, I think it could be good for revenue in a city. I mean, it's a big event, so it can attract a lot of profit. But one of the big contradictions, I mean, the whole point about pride was LGBT people saying this is who we are and we are, we're not going to live in the closet and we're proud of it, right? That makes sense. It's kind of reclaiming a sense of empowerment. I totally get that. But I do question why, for example, are so many pride events so overtly sexualized? I mean, when you have BDSM and you have clearly very explicit sexual references on public display at floats. And controversially, some pride events have had children involved. Now, I think that's wrong. I think, and to be fair, a lot of pride organizers themselves know that there is an issue with this and they will prohibit those sort of acts. But it is going on. And I have a big, big problem with this knee jerk reaction of the left, whereby anyone who questions that must be a homophobe or must be transphobic. I mean, put it this way: if you have a straight couple, and they're just having sex in a public place, they will be fined. They'll be arrested for lewd behavior. So this idea that oh, it's only because they're, you're only saying that because they're LGBT. I think there's just a basic level of decent behavior that we should all follow in public. I mean, I'm not going to go out and get my manhood out in public because I'd be arrested. So I do think that's one issue I have with pride events, the overt sexuality. The other problem is it's lending to stereotypes because it lends into the stereotype that gay men are promiscuous. Um, and that actually, in that sense, is actually quite damaging for the movement. I mean, why not draw attention to, I don't know, human rights in Uganda or something like that? It's this thing about putting such a focus on the overt sexuality. It's like, well, there's more to someone's personality than that. I mean, a gay man shouldn't be defined by the fact he likes other men. He could be defined by the fact that he is an architect, or he's an artist, or a writer, or a police officer. I mean, they're as diverse as anyone else. So that's something I take issue with on the. I mean, yeah, I'm also against kink at pride parades. They should be appropriate for all ages. And that's the thing. I'm not sure that they are. But if anyone says that, if they're straight, then, oh, it's homophobia. No, it's just a question of basic. I actually asked my gay friend this at one point. I asked what he thought of this. And he more or less agreed it's inappropriate. So okay, I'm just going to scroll back, Toxic, to some of your comments because you've left quite a few. Um, let's see. DMD, whereabouts in China have you taught? I'll just quickly address that. So the first occasion, 2013, my company, or the company I worked for, was based in Guilin in Guangxi region in the south. Beautiful, beautiful place. But I actually taught because they send you to schools around the country in Hunan province in the city of Yongzhou. And the second time, initially, I went to a place called Tongren in Guizhou province, but then there was problems there because in China things can change at the last minute. I went somewhere else in Guizhou province called Kaili City. Now that was a great school and the staff were great, and it was a very good experience overall. Except I had to leave early, so that's the answer. Hunan province and Guizhou province, both, well, Hunan in the south and Guizhou in the southwest. While on the subject of COVID-19, whilst I understand that you're by no means a gamer, there are various entertainment media that are all about zombies. Yeah, it seems to be a big thing. I mean, I don't even game, but even on my phone, I'm playing some pretty good games. It's just phone games, but I think the technology is great. I mean, the graphics are very realistic. I think they're very good. I forget the name of the game now, but it's just on my Android phone. And it's just a basic shoot 'em up, like kill the zombies, and but you could choose the characters, and the animation is fantastic. I mean, the facial features and all, it's really, really well done. So it seems to be a big. Why do you think that is, Toxic? Why do you think the whole zombie genre is so big in gaming? Do you think there's a reason for that? The Resident Evil series has the Umbrella Corporation, which in terms of the conduct had secretly genetically engineered viruses. Certainly, I think with the global pandemic, I mean, I can think of lots of films even related to the subject. 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later, World War Z with Brad Pitt, Das Train to Busan, a Korean film if you haven't seen it. There's a lot of films that cover this sort of subject. Day of the Dead, of course, or Dawn of the Dead, rather. But considering that if you have a scientific body in society that genetically engineers parasites and viruses, should always be a matter of concern. Absolutely. Just stretching my neck there. Well, one thing that has come out with the COVID is the increasing likelihood that it may indeed have been a lab leak from Wuhan rather than a wet market. I think both possibilities are still likely. And of course, China, being the sort of country that it is, wouldn't be transparent on this. The point I'm driving at is this should be illegal worldwide because it not only puts the whole world at risk if there is a leakage, um, but mucking around with viruses, parasites is not only suicidal but also criminally genocidal, whether it's intentional or not. It falls under the umbrella of bioterrorism. Yeah, it could be very dangerous. I mean, when smallpox was eradicated, or I think actually there's been traces of it coming back, but the last case I think was in Birmingham in 1980. Apparently, there's labs in the world that still have extracts of the bubonic plague. Now, that's quite scary when you think about it, given what happened with COVID. And of course, bubonic plague, or to give it its scientific name, Yersinia pestis, caused the Black Death, which was the single biggest killer in human history. Killed more people in the 1918 pandemic, killed more people in World War II. Um, Utterly devastating. Anywhere from 100 to 200 million deaths in the mid 14th century. The great irony, of course, is the Black Death led to the Renaissance. So something good came out of something bad. Guys, I'm going to round this up soon. Just my neck's a little bit uncomfortable. But this has been a good live stream. It has picked up, so I really appreciate all your comments, and I apologize if I missed any. I'm a gamer, actually. Toxic Holy Grenade, is your username, is that referring to a game? Is I'm speculating that it is? No worries, Nathan, I'm going to get my food. Okay. I'll just scroll back, guys, see if I've missed any comments. I hope I've addressed everything there. Sometimes comments trickle through afterwards because the stream has been quite fast. But thank you all for your interaction. LOL, it's a name I made up. Okay. I just thought it sounded like something from a game. Okay, guys, I'm going to round this up. Just my neck's a little bit painful. I need to stretch, so I'm going to round this one up. But I think it's been a very good session. Incidentally, this isn't really anything to do with viruses, but that new film with Brad Pitt, Bullet Train, looks kind of intriguing. I don't know if you guys think that looks intriguing or not. There's also one with Idris Elba, Beast. It's my birthday in a week, so I'll probably go to check out one of those. The last film I made was Elvis with Austin Butler. That was excellent, I thought, but over a month ago. Okay, guys, I'll round this up. Thank you very much. I think it's been a good session, and I will do this periodically. I apologize if I miss any questions, but hopefully I've covered as much of them as possible. And thank you all for your participation. Okay, take care. Thank you, everyone.